Human beings are social creatures. We do need to feel connected to people, but we also love freedom. There's a time where maybe freedom may be more important for us, so we go out and we explore the world on our own, where we're not surrounded by other nomads. And then there might come a time where you feel the call to social connection, and then you're like, you know what? I feel like the value of connecting with people is higher than the value of freedom, so I'm going to forsake some of my freedom in order to stay here for a while, in order to cultivate these relationships.
Imagine hopping from one exciting spot to the other, soaking in new cultures and living the life on your terms. But in between all that excitement, loneliness can sneak in. Welcome back to another episode of this miniseries with 7 nomads on the Radio Vagabond. Today we're diving into something every traveler understands: feeling alone in a world full of new places. In this episode, I'm again joined by 7 experienced nomads, each with a trick or two up their sleeves to beat loneliness and create a real sense of community. From the bustling markets in India to chasing the magical northern lights, our group of seasoned nomads have cracked the code to making friends no matter where you are. We're talking about turning chance meetings into lifelong friendships, how to blend online pals with real-life bonds, and how to build your support system that truly gets your nomad lifestyle. So whether you're tuning in from a beachside hammock in Thailand or a cozy corner of a cafe in Portugal, this episode is your guide to making friends on the move. Get ready to swap loneliness for connections that span the globe. Let's conquer digital nomad loneliness together. My name is Palabo, and this is the Radio Vagabond. 7 Nomads Part 5. From loneliness to lifelong connections.
Meet Palabo. At the age of 50, he made a bold decision. He sold everything and set out on a quest to visit every country in the world. This is the Radio Vagabond.
This episode is brought to you in part by Hotels25.com. It's a website that helps you find the best prices on hotels and guest houses and hostels around the world in one simple search. Hotels25.com.
The world is a book, and those who do not travel read only one page. The Radio Vagabond. Gotta keep moving.
So this is something I've thought a lot about as I have traveled around.
This is Mr. Derek Smith, the Canadian speaking coach, who's been nomading for a decade and now has a home base on Madeira Island.
And I've actually suggested this to many people. I've actually even had talks about this before, where some people will arrive in a location and they'll wonder, how do I meet new friends? How do I engage with people here on the ground? And I always suggest that if you want to meet people that are like-minded, you need to become the nucleus of your own community. So just
meaning what?
Maybe put on your own event, put on your own activity, and then watch as they come that afternoon or that evening, whenever you put it on, and then suddenly those similar interests will then be presented in the people that arrive. So then suddenly you've just made friends with similar interests. For me, as you know, I'm an event host and MC, so I'm always putting on open mics in any place that I come. Therefore, I will find comedians, singers, artists, people who will come to an open mic, and those are my people. So right off the bat, I've met a group of people that are on the ground and people that have similar interests to me. So I guess what I would say is, if you get a chance and you're wondering where do I find my people, is just pop on an event. If you're into knitting, if you're into shoe cobbling or whatever it is, put on an event for that and watch as your people will present themselves. And that's how you meet new friends.
Ranika Kunaru from Texas has been nomading for almost 3 years, and creating connections is also important to her. So much so that she's taken it into her own hands.
So this is something that's super important to me, not just building connections with everyone here, like that's at this Nomad Fest, but by building connections with the locals, especially because as you travel to a place over and over, then you want to have some sort of structure. So what I am doing is I always make sure within WhatsApp, I'm communicating with friends. I usually have weekly check-ins and just send voice notes, just so that, because everyone's on different time zones. And then I've even created a company called Cloud Connections to bring nomads together for festivals, to help bond and then create community while they're enjoying some of the best things that a culture has to offer.
We started this episode with hearing Australian John Bustill saying that human beings are social creatures and that we need to stay connected. He's got more words of wisdom.
You know, when you're moving around all the time, you're continually making yourself a stranger in new places and you're continually on your own. And so there's social isolation and loneliness kind of creep into the lifestyle. But nomads value freedom of movement. So we have this tension where we have this one force inside ourselves that wants us to go out and explore the world and to move. And then we have this other force within ourselves that's pulling us away from where we are, and another force that wants us to stay, to connect and belong. And so we're pulled in these different directions. And how do nomads get their social needs met while still holding on to their freedom? That's what I'm kind of interested in. And I also think a lot of nomads, and myself included, we never really felt like we belonged to where we were from. And we're ultimately looking for home, for a sense of belonging. And that's usually with people like ourselves, with other nomads.
Jason Robinson from Ohio has been using a community for location-independent people called Location Indie.
I have to give a nod to Location Indie once again.
Run by mutual friends of ours, Jason Moore and Travis Sherry.
They have a community where if I have questions or things about travel or building this lifestyle of being a digital nomad or what struggles are people going through, how can I help them or vice versa. Location Indie is one of those that I always go back to.
And they do a camp as well?
I was just at Camp Indie 2 weeks ago in Connecticut, so there were 120 folks that were anywhere in the spectrum of completely location independent like I am to they're in a 9-to-5 job and they really want to get there, so it was really a unique environment.
And it's always in Connecticut?
Currently, yes. They have a camp there that is built for adults summer camp. It's not a kids camp where they convert it for adults. It is made for an adult summer camp, so it's really cool place. Amazing high ropes courses that are otherworldly, just tons to do and plenty of places for them to have speakers and help us cultivate this lifestyle.
There's this cool quote by Gonzalo Hall where he says, nomads don't travel between places, they travel between communities. So we're traveling between, communities where we can tap into networks of people that are just like ourselves and we feel that sense of belonging. And then after a certain amount of time, we may feel, hey, the road calls us again, and then we move. And then we move for a little bit, and then we drop into another community full of people that are just like ourselves. There's this dynamic dance between feeling like you belong in a community and then wanting to explore and then feeling like you belong in another community by moving.
Is that really the case? Because I do it sometimes, and I do it whenever I can. That's one of the reasons I'm here. The main reason I'm here in Bansko is to get close to my community again, my people, and a lot of people that I know. Yeah. And I do Nomad Base, I do Nomad Cruise, I do the T-Bex conferences, where it's also a community. But not always. Yeah,
not always. It's also awesome to travel. I mean, to travel on your own, to go to these places that don't have nomad communities, because I think for most digital nomads, I guess, their first love was the love of travel and exploration. And so they still want to do that when they're kind of, when they have the ability now to be full-time travelers, I guess. But yeah, there does come, I think, it happens every so often where you start to feel like there's something missing. It's nice being a stranger in a strange land. It's really exciting. But then sometimes you don't want to be a stranger in a strange land. You want to kind of, you want to connect with people and you want to have that sense of belonging and community. And so I think the whole digital nomad lifestyle is this dynamic dance between freedom and exploration and then feeling like, you know what, I want to be connected with people. I want to cultivate friendships with people. I don't want to have to say goodbye again and again and again. So then you might come back to a base or a community where you might stay for a bit longer and then you can, make friends there. And eventually you will also have to say goodbye because, when your friends are nomads, eventually someone is going to leave or you're going to leave. Even in looking back on my own experience, like there have been times where I've been traveling on my own into these kind of, far-flung destinations, you could say. And then I might kind of spend some time in a nomad hub. and go to Nomad events and meet people, and oftentimes meet up with people that I've met previously in my travels.
Yeah.
So that's the cool thing about the Nomad community, is that although you do say goodbye to them, you're probably going to meet up with them again at another stage, in another place. And even for me, talking in Bansko, like, I ran into people that I'd met in Thailand, that I met in Ubud, just randomly here.
Yeah.
Because we all travel along similar kind of circuits.
We do. So there are a lot of communities and events out there. We're at Nomad Fest in Bansko. There's Nomad Base, Nomad Cruise, the T-Bex community, Ranika's Cloud Connections, Location Indie and their annual Camp Indie in Connecticut, and many others. I'm part of a few of these, and like Derek and Sean, I also tend to run into fellow nomads all over the world. I feel like these groups of people are my tribe, and almost like an extended family.
And it's all different shapes and sizes and age groups. That the majority, maybe they're in their 30s, but here I am in my 50s, and a lot of young kids as well.
And there's also, I mean, again, I'd like to consider myself, if I've been doing this over a decade, I'm in my 40s now, I'm now becoming one of the seniors, one of the veterans.
You're a veteran.
Yeah, I'm a veteran, exactly. And I think that's it. We're all starting to age, so different requirements and different kind of... I feel like the nomad movement and lifestyle is developing because it's going to need to match our age groups, because we're all getting older, like everybody, right? So yeah, how's this? We set the groundwork for the young ones, and now I need to establish what's a 40-year-old want, what's a 50-year-old want, what's a 60-year-old want, because there's more and more of us now. So yeah, it's exciting.
I'm even part of a community called Digital Nomads Beyond 50. So we are more and more in my age group, which is nice.
It's pretty nice.
But I don't feel that I'm different. I don't feel like I stick out. I feel I'm just part of this family.
Well, that's the thing. It's such an inclusive, welcoming community of people, right. And again, it's festivals like this, the one that we're at right now, that make you remember just how great and welcoming these people are. I can't believe how many people, I'm walking through this park right now, and how many people I know and that I met over 10 years ago, and I haven't seen, and between you and I haven't thought about since I met them, but I was like, oh my gosh, I know you, we met each other in Mexico City, and da-da-da-da. It's like, we all remember each other, and we always welcome and remain inclusive to these people. So it's quite a wonderful world we're in. Yeah? We're very fortunate to be, also in it. Like, we're not just getting started, we're in it now, and it's great to see these friendly faces everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, we're here in Bansko for Nomad Fest, and it was started by Matthias, and I met him on the Nomad Cruise, I think it was 5-6 years ago, and he was always playing board games. And I heard him say at some point, well, I started this co-work space in this community just so that I would have somebody here in Bansko to play board games with. And he was kind of joking, but I feel that was his passion, and I think there is some truth to it.
100%, exactly. It's more like, don't wait for it to happen. You got to put it on yourself. And just, again, a lot of people are just happy that you've created the space for them to do the thing they love to do. And then from that point forward, you have something in common.
My name is Bond.
Radio Vagabond.
A way to get into a community is by using co-living spaces.
Recently, the change in the way that I travel is more geared towards co-living spaces, and to those uninitiated, co-living spaces are where an accommodation says we have room for 20 people. Maybe there's separate bedrooms, or maybe there's a dorm room, but we could fit 20 people in this place, and we have desks, and we have chairs, and we have an office space that you can use inside this space. So it's all of the things that a digital nomad needs, but then they also add a community manager to that, and they add some events that are going on a calendar all week long, so you have the opportunity to immediately plug into something. I'll use Meetup, I'll use local apps to try and find people, but that's one of the best ways is co-living environments and things like that.
Do you pay a premium price for the co-living compared to if you get your own apartment somewhere?
Sometimes. That's a complicated equation because there's value involved and there's also trade-offs of costs. So for instance, really quickly here. Bansko has very inexpensive accommodations, most would say.
Yeah.
My current apartment is running me about €550, and I don't have great internet, so therefore I have to go to a co-working space, which is another €160 a month.
Yeah.
So my costs are adding up to 800, 900, euros. When you get a co-living space, a lot of those things are included. So while the price may be higher, you're not kind of piecemealing them together. So it all ends up being within $100 or so a month for me, depending on the route that I end up taking. So yes, co-living does tend to cost more on the surface, but when you look at all of the value that you're getting, the fact that you don't have to walk 20 minutes to co-working every day and lose these pieces of time, and also you have community managers that are creating these opportunities for you to bond with other people very quickly and easily, there's a lot of trade-offs.
I've never used a co-living space, no, but I would like to. I think it's an interesting concept.
Yeah, it's been a lot of people have talked about it here, and it seems like more and more are popping up all over the world. And
Yeah.
I've never done it either. And it's a co-living space. Is you get your own place, but then there might be community around you with a co-work space in that building or that area, and maybe some events and people just joining each other for dinner and stuff like that. And I could see myself doing that and looking for that more.
Yeah. I think a co-living space is an interesting concept because it, in a sense, solves the social question or the social issue, or the question of loneliness, because people can sign up, check into a co-living space, and it's almost like they have an instant community. They have an instant group of friends that they can kind of connect with in that same space. And people that join co-living spaces generally are joining it because they want to meet people. So there's this atmosphere of openness where people want to connect with you. And it's interesting because you can, check into a co-living space for a month, and you can get your social needs met by dropping into this community. And then at the end of the month, you can leave, so you have your freedom back. And then you can maybe travel for a couple of weeks somewhere, and then you can maybe check into another co-living space, and then again get that social fix that you need.
That was Sean Busuttil from Australia. Nora Dunn is also very interested in the co-living spaces.
Absolutely. So this is the great experiment of 2023 for me, is staying in co-living spaces and participating in co-living, co-working programs. I've written about this academically on my website for years, but I've never personally experienced it. And ever since realizing it was important for me to develop this social network, I thought I would give it a try. So January of this year, I spent a month in a co-living space on the island of Madeira. And it was amazing. It was so much fun. I also have a couple of resources on my website for co-living spaces, but I must say it's very difficult to keep them up to date because there are so many co-living experiences.
Some people might say, oh, aren't you in a bubble of just other nomads? And are you meeting the locals? Are you getting a feel that could this be in Ohio?
It's a very true problem. Maybe problem's not the right word, but it's just a reality. And the other day I was here and we had a happy hour at one of the co-working spaces, and I was having this conversation with somebody. I looked around and I said, these are all people that I could have met in Charlotte, North Carolina at a networking event. It feels no different than that. And at that moment, it was true. So there is, if you want to be a conscious human being and you want to interact with the actual place that you're at, you do have to do work to do that. And you have to get outside of your bubble and your comfort zones, because you immediately create your own comfort zones whenever you go to a new place. That's, we try and get out and be adventuresome, but in reality, we're saying, okay, I got to get work done. I have to find a bubble so that I can make the gears continue to spin, and I want to experience this place and try and be a good worldwide traveler and a good human being. But it is a fine balance, and it is very difficult, in my opinion, to do that regularly. Especially when English is spoken heavily in a place, because I think it forces us to reconcile some differences and work a little bit harder to connect whenever English isn't spoken. And when you go to a place where English is spoken a lot, even the locals will revert to English, and all of a sudden you start to lose their identity of place because they're not even speaking their own language. They're catering to you. So it's a very complicated equation that, I think people need to pay a lot of attention to that and not just be a traveler, try to be a world citizen more than just a traveler or a tourist.
I have incorrectly stated for years that the only thing digital nomads have in common, I will say it again, the only thing digital nomads have in common is that we speak English. And I have been reminded throughout the course of this week that I'm wrong about that. And I think it's true. I think I have been mistaken to say that. I was like, for years, I just thought, like, what is it that gathered us all here? It's like, well, we're all speaking English. Yeah, we all love travel. Maybe. Yeah, we all are into SEO. Maybe. No. We're all just speaking English. And there is some truth to it, but I do think the modern nomad, the 2023, 2024 nomad, they're definitely got more things going on because I've seen groups of German nomads that are just hanging out talking German. So I'd like to make my official statement to anyone who's ever heard me say that before. I retract my statement. We have more than just English in common.
Speaking of languages, Chris also mentioned that it's a good idea to learn a few words in the local language so you can build a community with the locals.
Yeah, I think the absolute bare minimum is like be polite. So I always like to understand hello and
Dobrý den.
Yeah, if you can get hello and like please, that's pretty good. Yeah. And then I think that numbers are really useful. Maybe traveling in a couple, then it's more helpful because often you're buying two of something. It's 2 coffees. Without just doing the fingers. You can always default to fingers, but it's nice to be able to do that.
Yeah. I remember I worked at a co-working space that was also a co-living space in Chiang Mai. And the people at this co-living space only really hung out with each other. Yeah. And it kind of makes sense because back in the settled world...
In the real world.
Your friend quota is full. Like, you have enough friends in your world. Like when you live in a place for many, many years, you have maybe the people that you grew up with, the people that you work with. You're not really, you could say, in the market to make new friends because you already have friends. Mm-hmm. That happens as well when you live in a co-living space because now you have like 6 or 7 people that are in that space with you that fulfill all your social needs. So when you go to a Nomad event, you're not really as open to meeting new people because you already have people in your social world at that point. Mm-hmm. And so I just find that to be the case, and I find that's really, really strange. But I get it because even back in Melbourne, when I went back to Melbourne last year for a few months, this is a bit of a side note, but I went to a university event and I thought, wow, this is going to be a great opportunity for me to connect with other students because up until then I'd done the whole PhD remote. Yeah. And I went to this event and I tried to like introduce myself and, talk to other students, and I found them to be quite closed because they had their own circle of friends that they had since starting their PhD, and I was a new person. And they weren't really that open to meeting me because they're like, well, I have my social needs met. Yeah. But when you're a nomad and you're new into the place, you don't have any social needs met, so you're open to meeting people.
When this episode is published, I'm actually in a co-living space for the first time in Playa del Carmen. That's also a big nomad hotspot. So there's a good chance I'm gonna bump into some old friends and make some new ones. As I'm recording this, I haven't moved there yet, but if you follow me on Instagram, I'll share what that's like. Just search Radio Vagabond and you'll find me. I'm also going to post something on my Facebook page, the Radio Vagabond. Speaking of Facebook, according to Gianni, that can also be a great tool.
Yeah, well, there are different ways to do that. One of the things is all the dear Facebook and Facebook groups, usually you can do a research like Bansko Expats, Bansko Digital Nomads. Any city, any country you go, you find this community. So Facebook is always very useful for this.
I think when I first started my nomad journey, before all the WhatsApp groups, so now it's so common for pretty much any place on Earth, I mean, that's an exaggeration, to have like a WhatsApp group of nomads or travelers you can come join.
Or a Facebook group, when people were still using Facebook.
Yeah, so there was...
it's like digital nomads in Medellin
Budapest,
or expats sometimes.
There were Facebook groups, but I think when I first started, I used a lot of couchsurfing.
Right.
I used that website. I used meetup.com and Facebook were the primary online resources that I used to meet people. And then, it's really weird. I think in the last 2-3 years, WhatsApp has kind of taken over.
It has, yeah. Well, the Facebook group for Nomads still exists. I've just joined 2 in Playa del Carmen, each of them with close to 8,000 members.
Travel is possible at any age. Your sense of adventure is just over the horizon. So, reach out and grab it. This is the Radio Vagabond. Gotta keep moving.
And the other thing that I do is sometimes I stay in a co-working, I go to work in a co-working. I've done some experiences of co-living, but also I like to go also outside the community of digital nomads. Sometimes I go where there are other kinds of the communities, like in Copenhagen there is, or in Bali, or in Goa, there are these communities of spiritual, detoxing, vegan, all these kind of things. And for example, I was in Copenhagen this year, and I was doing a lot of meditation, meeting also people. I do contact improvisation, which is a very interesting form of dance, and release the stress of working too much at the computer. So co-living, co-working, different communities that you can find online everywhere.
So Gianni goes dancing, and so does Nora.
I think it's really important to make connections with either local people or
Tinder,
other digital nomads. Hey, listen, if the shoe fits, go for it. My personal way of connecting with people when I travel is through Latin dance. So I'm a salsera and a bachatera, so I dance salsa and bachata, and these are very universal dances. So pretty much every place I go, I'm able to find a Latin social, and I will show up to that, and I will meet people that way.
And at the end of this episode, Nora will give us a little bit of a performance here.
It's too bad it's a podcast. But it's a great way. I always say the best way to connect with people is to share an underlying interest. So if you have a common interest, that will help you transcend the inevitable obstacles of culture and language, and to create a deeper connection in being able to share something that you both love.
Stay tuned to the very end for Nora's dance. I mentioned Tinder as a joke, but still, dating is also a thing that can be tricky for a nomad. Here's Gianni again.
I don't use so much Tinder. I don't do so much dating online. I find it a bit of a waste of time, because now it's overrated, and there is so much in these dating apps that you can basically go from one date to the other, and it's difficult that you find a meaningful dating or meaningful relationship.
Especially when you say to the other person, I'm leaving soon.
Exactly. But also, I don't like this thing of browsing people like you are at the supermarket, and then you meet this person, you spend maybe some nice time together, but as you said, either you go different ways, a different part of the world, different paths, or maybe you're just not matching what it was virtual in reality, So I found myself a waste of time. I prefer to go where there are the people, meeting the people. And sometimes I have to say, I also like to have this solitary mode, which is important.
Sean also finds the whole dating scene difficult when you're a nomad.
Yeah, it's difficult. Like, if you meet a local person wherever you are, one of the first questions they're going to ask you is how long you're here for, or do you live here? Yeah. And once you say, I'm only here for a month or two, and you say...
Or in my case, 2 weeks.
Or 2 weeks. or your answer to the question, do you live here, is no, they don't want anything to do with you anymore. Because
let's be friends.
Yeah, let's be friends. The only dating potential is to date another nomad, which in itself is difficult because nomads are following their own path, pursuing their own goals. We're very individualistic, and we don't like to compromise. It's a relatively small pool. But now it's different. Like, there are a lot more people that are entering the space of digital nomadism, so there's a lot more opportunity, I guess.
Right.
Because if you think about what a relationship is and what it should be, it's a relationship of compromise where it's not just about you anymore, it's not just about them, it's about the relationship. It's almost like a third entity. And if we think about one of the fundamental values of digital nomadism, which is freedom, to compromise is basically to willingly give away some of your freedom for the sake of this third entity, be it the relationship. And to ask a nomad to give up their freedom is kind of like sacrilegious. It's like, no, why would I give up my freedom?
Yeah.
So I find that's very, very difficult. Like, I did have a girlfriend for a year and a half. She was another nomad, which was cool at the start. But then there's also the problem of, like, I think we spent too much time with each other because we lived together, we traveled together, we worked together. So I think, back in the real world, you're at least apart from each other for 8 hours, 9 hours a day, where they go off to their work and you go off to your work. So I think, if, my advice to the listeners out there, if you are in a nomadic relationship, you need to actually consciously spend time apart because you're probably going to drive each other crazy. And even if you're the most compatible couple in the world, if you spend too much time with another human being, you're probably going to start to annoy each other. So it's possible, but it's very, very difficult. But I think a lot of nomads, when push comes to shove, whether they would sacrifice their freedom for the good of a relationship, I think it's usually they say, you know what, stuff the relationship, I'm going to pursue the freedom, at least for a certain amount of time, and then they may get really, really lonely and then want to have a relationship again. And then they might find someone, and then they might feel confined and constricted by this relationship, and then idolize escaping and leaving and breaking up. So are we ever going to be happy? I don't know.
Exactly. Chris, you travel with your girlfriend, but are you also, as a couple, looking for communities and how to meet other people when you get to a new place?
Yeah, for sure. Like, this is super important. I think let's give this some real airtime, because loneliness is something that everybody talks about in the community, and it's kind of, I think even people outside of the community view it as like the worst thing about it, or like, maybe I can't do digital nomad life because I will be lonely. But actually, I think there's a lot of ways methods and resources that help you fight loneliness, at least in the short term. Long term is different, and I think probably long term, because I'm part of a couple, I don't have so much loneliness, because wherever we go, we always have one another. But yeah, short term, it's like there's always a Facebook group, there's always a WhatsApp, or there's always, like, worst case, there's like a Reddit thread.
Oh.
For you to like ask questions on or something.
When I want to meet the locals, I would maybe join a Toastmasters meeting, or in my case, I used to be a Rotarian, so I find a Rotary club. In Christchurch, I went to a comedy club all the time and got to hang out with some people there. And
That's interesting. So you said comedy club, and for me, I have this similar thing, which is like, because I talk about this whenever this question comes up, I talk about routine. Maybe different for you if you're in a place for like 10 days or something.
Oh, this was a full month.
Yeah, oh, well, there you go.
A long time.
Yeah, that's enough time to build a routine. So I like to find a local cafe and go back to the same local cafe multiple times a week. And there's like this magical moment when the staff in the local cafe, they see you every day for maybe 1 week, and they just think, okay, he's on vacation. But there's the point where they realize, like, maybe you're not here for holiday. Maybe you're not here on vacation. You've not come for 1 week and then disappeared. You keep coming back. And at that point, it's like, yeah, you just get to have natural interactions with somebody who is probably from a place.
Yeah.
or probably from the place that you're visiting, and for that reason probably has a lot of knowledge and insight and understanding of like how things work there, and maybe where you can get salted butter.
Yeah, exactly. As you heard earlier in this miniseries, Nora Dunn has a home base because she missed having a community. And it seems like she's not alone. At one of the sessions here at Bansko Nomad Fest, there was a talk about finding a home base somewhere in the world. And it's a conference for nomads.
It was fascinating because here we were at Nomad Fest, 700 digital nomads from around the world.
Digital nomads that technically do not have a home base and travel around the world in the old definition.
Yeah, exactly, technically. But I'm pretty sure of the 700, there was quite a few who did not fit that definition, as evidenced by this workshop. Now, the title of the workshop was about finding a home base. So that's going to tell you the sort of people who are going to show up. But partway through the workshop, the speaker said, actually, who here is actually not interested in having a home base at all? And of this absolutely packed auditorium, 2 hands went up. And that was one couple. So everybody else who self-identifies as digital nomads were also realizing or there to learn about setting up or finding a place that they could call home, or a base anyway, that they could use as a home base. And I will say, from personal experience, as much as I'm not in my home base that often, I do like having the ability to return to my coffee maker and my mattress and my specially curated comforts of home that are familiar and enjoyable, and in a neighborhood that I don't have to figure out from the ground up when I arrive. And I can use it as a place to relax, unwind, assimilate my travel experiences, and then catch up with family and friends. So I do appreciate it. I just maybe not always there all the time.
By the way, do you rent it out when you're not there?
I do not. I probably should. But first of all, I know the people who own the building and they wouldn't be down for that. But second of all, after so many years of living on other people's turf, I kind of wanted just to have my place.
Don't touch my stuff.
Don't mess with my shit. That's it. And because I know the people who own the building where I have this place, I have the deal of the century in terms of how much I spend for what I have. So I can afford to leave it empty. But what I might do is I might use it in the not too distant future as collateral for home exchanges.
Right.
So that would be an opportunity for me to allow a traveler to stay in my place while they're visiting, and that would give me points in the bank, the home exchange bank, to then be able to stay in other people's homes around the world.
Yeah. I hope you find these episodes valuable, and if you do, please share them with your friends and consider giving it some stars and a nice review in your podcast app. And if you have any questions, please send me an email and I'll answer them in upcoming episodes. Simply send an email to listener@theradiovagabond.com or go to contact on theradiovagabond.com. Here you can also record a little voice message, which would be even cooler. And that's it for this episode. We have 2 more and you don't want to miss them. Next Tuesday, you'll hear the 7 nomads share their favorite memory as digital nomad, when I asked them if they have a eureka moment where they just had to pinch themselves for living this lifestyle. And in the last one, in 2 weeks, it's all about advice for somebody who wants to become a digital nomad. That's it. Oh wait, we have one more thing. So now, dance. My name is Palabo, and I gotta keep moving. See ya.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Radio Vagabond. Produced by RadioGuru.co.uk.